Welcome to r/Am I the Jerk, where Karen demands to drive OP's new car. Am I the jerk for not letting my coworker test drive my wife's new car? Me, 31 male, and my wife, 30 female, decided that we might try to start a family of our own after landing stable jobs and buying our first house together. During this, I asked my wife if she could get her license. She had never bothered to before, as she lived in Boston before meeting and marrying me, as I couldn't ferry our family around everywhere and try to get to work. So I got my wife an older car and I gave her some driving lessons, along with a driving instructor, and she passed. She was happy with driving the car I got her, but I thought I should treat her. Up until now, I drove a 2011 Honda Civic. As a family, neither of us have ever had a new car. So I put together some of my savings and I bought her a brand new Mercedes which she loved. Now let's get to the main part of this. About a month after getting the Mercedes, my car, the Civic, decided to give up the ghost. When I took it to the repair shop, they said it had various issues, including wiring issues, causing it to stop supplying power to the engine randomly. My wife told me to take her car to work that day, so I took it in, and as I was parking in the lot, a coworker, let's call her X, came up to me from their car. She started asking about the car and asked the price and where my Honda went. When I started telling her what happened to my car, she cut me off midway through and asked if she could test drive my new car. At which point, I told her it was my wife's car and that I would like to keep it pristine for her. She gave me a bit of an off look and stormed into the office. As I walked up, I got a few weird looks, and when I sat down next to my work buddy, he said that X had told everyone in the office that I'm a jerk and that I've changed into a snob after getting a new car. I don't understand what I did wrong other than maybe not letting her drive it. It would help if someone could give me some light on this. Thank you. Not the jerk. You would be the jerk if you let her drive your wife's car without her permission, and I'd never give permission to someone who just wants to drive a cool car. She can go to a dealership like anyone else. Given the kind of car it was, and the kind of person she appears to be, I'm betting she wouldn't drive it with the due care and attention it needs. Plus, she might not be insured, and she certainly wouldn't pay for any increase in insurance even if she were. If someone came to me and said, OP is a meanie for not letting me drive his wife's car, I'd tell them, good for OP. You won't drive mine either. Consider giving HR a heads up about this. Am I the jerk for telling my husband that I see him as a liability and not as a partner? It's 2 a.m. and I'm crying and tired and worn out. I've held this in for so long, not wanting to burden friends or family with my marital problems. I, 34 female, have been with my husband, who's 37, we'll call him Nathan, for 8 years. Ever since our daughter, who's 3, was born, I've been unable to trust Nathan with anything, no matter how small it is. Background. When I was 19, after a semi-truck driver fell asleep at the wheel and turned my car into scrap metal with me inside of it. I have enough metal holding me together that I light up like a Christmas tree for TSA, and I'm physically impaired with good days and bad days. I used a portion of my settlement check to buy a house outright and have it retrofit to accommodate my needs, as I'll eventually require a wheelchair. I work in software development as it's fun and nobody cares if I work from bed on bad days. My husband has not worked in 5 years, which has been fine until our daughter was born. Between the settlement money, a paid-off house, and my salary, I enjoyed having him here with me. He contributed by handling most of the domestics. We pay for a weekly cleaner with monthly deep cleaning because it gave us more time together. Ever since our daughter was born, it was like a light switch turned off in his head. For our daughter, he would buy the wrong size diapers, not fully mixed bottles, put diapers on backwards, not clean up after her, forget to latch cabinets. This past week, he's gone to the store 3 times because he keeps coming home with the wrong size socks and shoes for her. I eventually just ordered the right ones on Amazon. For me, he's tried to help me with my weekly pill organizer fill-up and several times has spilled the contents of the new medication all over the floor, then not seeing that he didn't get all of them off the floor. He has repeatedly brought me grapefruit juice to take my medication with, a huge no. He has repeatedly forgotten that I can't have dairy and puts milk in my coffee or cheese on a burger. He's broken so many things of mine from being careless. He shattered my laptop because it slipped out of his hand when he tried to pack it for a trip, even after I said I would pack it myself. We've lost so many spoons and forks to the disposal. He tried to replace the head gasket in my car and he over-torqued the engine bolt, which shattered inside the block, and 2 different shops said they couldn't repair it. We ended up getting a new vehicle because a replacement engine would have cost $11,000. A week later, he crashed the new car into the garage door because he thought he had pressed the brakes, not the accelerator. He wanted to do TikToks and streaming as a hobby. I supported him initially, but I quickly noticed a pattern. Anything regarding our daughter or me, he was sloppy and careless. He never had accidents with his own stuff. He would build entire sets to stream or make videos with, leave the garage, and leave his brain in the garage. It came to a head 4 nights ago. He streamed himself building a new set piece, 9 hours straight. Meanwhile, I worked, clocked out early to pick up our daughter from summer camp, cooked and fed both of us, got her ready for bed. He came out to help put her to bed. I let him know that I needed to get some work done and would be in my office, and I asked him to take the trash out. He said he would. 2 hours later, I left my office and the house felt really warm. He had taken the trash out but left our front door partially open and was back in the garage with his game volume really loud. I panicked since our daughter is able to get out of bed and thankfully she was sound asleep. But she could have easily toddled right out of the house and we wouldn't have noticed. Then I noticed his stove top burner was on, with a small pot on it with nothing inside. I didn't use the stove for cooking that night. I popped my head into the garage and said, "Hey, I need you for a minute." I informed him of the door situation and he responds, "I thought I locked it." We checked the camera and no, he did not. I asked about the burner being on and he said that he was planning to make ramen and forgot. He pulled the still hot pot off the burner and put it straight into the sink on top of our daughter's favorite plastic plate, which is now ruined. I'll admit, I overreacted and screamed, "What are you doing?" He realized what he had done and he pulls the pot off of our daughter's plate and straight onto the countertop. I grab it quickly and run it under water to cool it down. I tell him I can't tonight. I can't deal with him. I'm taking my meds and going to sleep. He gets a cup from the cupboard and sets it straight onto the burner that's been on. I hit my limit. I started crying. He kept saying that it was fine, things happen, it's just an accident. He's had a rough day from streaming, he's just tired. Why am I crying? It's just a cup, we can replace it. The anger hit and I said, "It's because I have a liability and not a partner." He said, "What does that mean?" I screamed that it's because I can't trust him to do anything, that I'm always having to watch him like he's a kid, always having to bear the cost of his mistakes, that every time I get careless and think I can trust him to be an adult, I'm always the one getting done over. I then said, "I can't see you as a partner anymore. You're just another liability in my checkbook." He immediately stormed out of the kitchen and went to bed. I called my mom and told her what happened. She thinks it's just stress and offered to take our daughter for a week so that we could figure this out without our daughter seeing it. She says it was a jerk thing to call my husband a liability. In the morning, I told my husband that my mom would pick up my daughter from summer camp and offered to watch her for a week. He said, "Okay," and that's the only interaction we've had since. He spends all day in the garage playing video games with his friends, making TikToks and streaming. For food, he's been ordering DoorDash and having the person deliver it to the garage. It's been days and he refuses to be in the same room as me. I've tried messaging him to ask if we can talk or figure out a solution, but he's just left me on red. If I pop into the garage, he ignores me, but apologizes to his friends or viewers for the interruption and unmutes his mic when the noise stops. Before the blow-up, I've asked if there was something going on. I tried to gently respond every time he messed up so our daughter didn't associate mistake to anger. I asked him to schedule with a doctor to see if something was going wrong medically. He always said I was overreacting, people make mistakes, and didn't see an issue, even when the same mistakes kept happening. When I tried to get him to understand that it was concerning just how expensive his mistakes were getting, he'd wave it off as, "It's not like we can't afford it." I love him dearly. I just miss the person he was before we had a kid, the one I could trust and rely on. Did I mess this up forever? Was I being too harsh on his mistakes? Am I missing something? Am I the jerk? I wonder how peaceful has it been for you since he started living in the garage? Has anything broken in your house? Any accidents happened? Peaceful, but expensive. I wonder how he's paying for all that DoorDash if he isn't working. How much of her money is he blowing with his hobby and food when he's not even going anywhere? I'm sorry this is happening to you, and I honestly think something is very wrong with your husband. There's several occurrences that can't be seen as mistakes, and you're not overreacting. Forgetting a pot on the stove is obviously dangerous, but leaving the door open with your toddler there means he doesn't seem to be situationally aware enough to keep his kids safe. It's not just the same mistakes over and over again, it's the fact that the consequences are getting worse and worse that can't be minimized and ignored. He really shouldn't be driving anything. If he's unwilling to seek medical advice and deflecting, you may need to consider having him leave your home. He's a walking disaster, literally. Not the jerk. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know. There are few things worse than having a partner who is completely and utterly useless. Phone calls for the previous owner, who turned out to be my crappy manager. I bought a Sony Ericsson and a premium SIM card, not realizing it had been abandoned by its previous owner. By the third day, I started receiving calls for a guy named Pizza from various financial institutions. It turned out that the number previously belonged to him, and for 20 years I've been getting these calls. Determined to keep my premium number, I began a routine of blocking any wrong numbers. Back then, blocking was device-specific, so each time I got a new phone, I had to start over, keeping a list of numbers to block. I got my first job after graduating in 2009. Around 2010, I was assigned to a new project with a notorious reputation for burning people out due to a nefarious project manager named Bits. I didn't know his full name for quite a while. He took pride in making our lives horrible. Bits ruled with an iron fist. From the moment his team stepped into the office, they were met with a barrage of emails and messages, each more urgent than the last. Bits thrived on creating chaos, often changing project deadlines on a whim, demanding his team work late into the night and through weekends. His presence loomed over every task. He insisted on micromanaging every detail, yet was quick to take credit for any successes, no matter how small. Failures, however, were met with his notorious tirades, losing it on his team and assigning blame without hesitation. His unpredictable temper kept everyone on edge, afraid to make the slightest mistake. Meetings were another tool in his arsenal of torment. He scheduled them during lunch breaks and after hours. These meetings were often pointless, serving only to reinforce his dominance and disrupt any semblance of work-life balance his team might have had. Under his reign, morale plummeted and burnout soared. I was quite ashamed when I learned that he was from the same area I was and had gone to the same school, but years before me. In 2012, our company merged with a parent company. Almost nothing changed personnel-wise, but infrastructure-wise, we got MS Outlook and an organization view. That was when I first learned about Bits from an organizational hierarchy perspective. His full name was an eye-opener. It was Pizza. Now, the name was common enough, but at the time, mobile numbers had an area-specific pattern, so I already knew that the previous owner of my number was from the same area as me. Still, it could be someone else. I wanted to dig deeper. I talked with an old mentor who lived in the same area and had coached several high school students for the last 2 decades. He confirmed my suspicions. I won't go into the details, but it was evident that Pizza and Bits were the same person. I had been quite upset with this unknown person named Pizza for almost a decade by then, and Bits had been the bane of my existence for quite some time. This is where the revenge lies. First, I unblocked all of the numbers in my phone. I was getting 5 to 6 calls a day on average. But after unblocking about 150 numbers, it increased to 15 to 18. My answering strategy changed drastically. Instead of saying wrong number, I politely explained that the owner had changed his number and provided his current number to update their database. This is where I might be the jerk. I also volunteered his manager's number in case he tried something else. The fallout was epic. These people had been trying to find him for almost a decade. Banks had sold his debts to companies that harassed people for a living to get their money back. It turned out he had been taking loans in everyone's name, his wife, parents, uncles, aunts, and giving everyone that same number. He was evading credit card debt and loans of upwards of $200,000 US, which is a ton of money where we're from. Apparently, he had almost 20 cases filed against him, but no one could find him, probably why he thought he could walk on water. There are multiple versions of what happened at the office when his manager started to get calls about him. He was let go about 2 months later, and we haven't heard from him since. Am I the jerk for turning my niece away at the door because of how she treats my daughter? My sister Teresa has a 16-year-old daughter, Quinn. Quinn and I used to be very close when she was younger, and we loved spending time together. However, since becoming a teenager, Quinn has become very snarky and sarcastic in a mean way. I particularly don't like the way that she behaves towards my own daughter, Bella, who's 6. Quinn crossed the line. A particular episode at a birthday party was when I'd had enough and told Quinn, "I don't want you to come over until you can start being nice to Bella." Teresa was present when I said this. We live a short walk away from each other. A few days ago, Quinn arrived and wanted dinner, and I turned her away at the door and told her, "I don't like how you treat my daughter. Unless it's an emergency, you're not welcome here." Teresa called me because she said I was a horrible person for turning Quinn away because she's 16 and my niece was upset. Teresa has stopped trying to do anything serious about Quinn's verbal attitude and has justified it in the past with statements like, That's just how some teenagers are. It's a teen thing. Teenagers shouldn't be treated like young kids. Or, Quinn's almost an adult. It's not your place to parent her like she's a kid. I brought up Teresa's past words and told her that she is correct that Quinn is an adult who doesn't need to be scolded by me, and I have a right to protect my kid from unkind people. Quinn is already having issues with his school emailing home or friends making excuses for why they don't want to see her, and it's time for Teresa to wake up and do something about her daughter. Teresa and I both have given our sides to mutual friends and acquaintances, and they're divided. Some are saying that Quinn's attitude is not okay, but I was wrong to turn her away at the door because she's still 16 and she's my niece. They said being a teenager and rapidly going from childhood to adulthood is already a rough transition, and according to Teresa, Quinn appears to be having issues at school, and I should try to have more patience with her and see what may be going on outside of home. Regardless of the reason, I feel I had to set a hard boundary with Quinn's behavior. It isn't an easy time, but at 16, you still know right from wrong, and Bella doesn't deserve to be subjected to that kind of treatment. But are my friends and acquaintances correct that I was too hard on my niece and sister and I should apologize for how I responded to them? Not the jerk. Quinn needs to understand that words can actually hurt people. That's what adults tend to forget a lot of times. You set a good boundary. Kids need to understand that this behavior is unacceptable. You're causing too many issues. Not the jerk. It's unrealistic to expect a teenager to never be snarky or sarcastic, but it's good to expect them to take responsibility for how they treat other people. Actions have consequences. Quinn needs to learn that being mean to her cousin is not acceptable and that being a teenager is not a free pass to be awful. I don't think there's anything awful about turning someone away if it's only a short walk. If she can't try to learn to curb her behavior and apologize when she's hurtful, she can deal with the short walk home. OP's landlord has gas company issues that cost him dearly. We moved into an apartment not knowing where the gas meter was, assuming it was in the basement, which we're directly above. 6 months into our lease, we were contacted by the gas company, Con Edison, saying that the gas meter was in our unit and they needed to access it for an upgrade or we'll be fined. That's when we discovered our landlord had built a wall over the gas meter. The landlord is refusing to take the wall down. We explained that to Con Edison and they said it was our responsibility to provide access, and the wall is between us and our landlord. Until they can replace the old meter, we'll be charged $100 a month. I asked if they'll come and take the wall down if we gave them access to our unit. They said they didn't have the authority to do that. I'm not sure how else I'm supposed to give access besides taking a sledgehammer to the wall myself. What are my legal options here? This seems crazy to me, and I'm upset that I'm charged for a situation I have absolutely no control over. Update. After getting stonewalled by the gas company's customer service, I found the personal phone number of the SVP of Customer Relations and I called her. Her office got on it and is having an inspector come out next week. After they document the situation, I'll contact code enforcement. I've been extremely tired lately and completely forgot to mention that there's a small peephole in the wall where you can actually read the meter through it. I can't find the emergency shutoff valve either anywhere in the kitchen or in the part of the wall I can see into. I think it's further up into the wall. And the reason I'm tired is because we have a colicky newborn baby, so we're bracing for the possibility of moving with a newborn. Update. New and interesting legal problems are coming up. We called 311 and we got a referral for a free consult with a housing lawyer and filed a DOB complaint. An hour after we filed the complaint, our landlord called us freaking out. He said according to the terms of our lease, we would be liable for any of his legal fees, including the fines from the DOB, which he said would be tens of thousands. He then accused us of making all the other DOB complaints on the building, which include leaky gas pipes and our fire escapes being death traps, which was nice to know. He told us it would be in our best interest not to let the DOB inspector in. So we let the building inspector in. The wall covering the gas meter is only the tip of the "wow, you really shouldn't do that with gas pipes" iceberg. The building inspector filed a violation and gave our landlord 48 hours to fix all of the issues. The lawyer we did a consult with laughed when we told him all of this. We called him back after the first consult. He said his retainer is $250 and we're waiting until the end of the day to decide if we should hire him. Our best case scenario at this point would be for the landlord to do enough to keep the unit inhabitable for another month and then let us out of our lease in mid-August. We used documents shared on my first post to find all the other obvious code violations in the unit and inform the landlord about all of them at once. Hopefully we can annoy him into letting us quit our lease. Final update. We moved out this week and so far have heard nothing from our former landlord. Our lawyer, however, is on standby. So, an unsatisfactory conclusion by Reddit standards, but we wanted to avoid going to court. My parents have a large house in New England on a wooded lot in a quiet suburb, and already our quality of life is 1000% better. I wake up every morning and sit with my dog and baby on a big porch looking out at trees. My son actually got to touch grass for the first time in his life. All of our friends and family live here, and after many months of being sick and isolated, I'm planning Sunday dinners. This was the absolute best outcome for me and my family. Am I the jerk for reminding someone that they're a loser at a friend's dinner party? I, 24 male, was invited to my friend's dinner party, about 10 people total. There's one dude there, who's 22, who I've never liked. He's a leech and an overall jerk. He's the younger brother of one of the people in our friend group. The reason why I can't stand him is because of how often he asks for money from me and his older brother and the rest of the group. When I first ever met this kid, he called me the day after at 3 a.m. asking me to come pick him up from the bar because he was drunk. He asked me almost like I was obligated to do so. Another time, I picked him up to grab food for a past dinner party we had. He bought chips and a bunch of other snacks, but then stuffed it in his backpack and didn't bring it to the get-together. He didn't even buy anything for the party. He constantly asks the entire friend group for money for his rap and singing career, even though he works part-time for his dad cleaning toilets. The list goes on. Come to the dinner party. He called me out during the dinner for being a bum over something we were talking about at dinner. I replied to him that he doesn't want to start anything with me, which to that he started calling out all my flaws and making fun of my current job. It's corporate but for a small company. Not really sure why he made fun of it, to be honest. We were drinking, so maybe he was drunk, which I said to him and told him to relax, but he kept pressing the matter over nothing. I sat up in my seat and reminded him that he's a loser. I started by saying, "Do you know how much of a loser you are? You leech off your brother and the rest of us. You do absolutely nothing but beg for money for your stupid music career that isn't going anywhere, and you work as a toilet cleaner for your daddy." I was really ticked off, I can't lie. For him to try and embarrass me like that in front of everyone just set me off. It got really quiet, and I told him, "Don't ever try and embarrass me again in front of people, you loser." He ended up just kind of looking down and sitting there. Dinner went back to normal after maybe 15 minutes, and then we all went home. Older bro says he knows his younger bro was out of line, but he said that his brother is aware of his current situation and was most likely just lashing out because of how his life is turning out. He asked me to just talk to him and apologize. I'm absolutely willing to talk to him, but I'm not apologizing for anything. We can have a civil one-on-one conversation to determine why he thought it was a good idea to try and embarrass me and continue to do so after I told him to stop. And if he wants to apologize to me, that's fine. Friend called me heartless, said that I'm kicking someone while they're down. Friend group is pretty split. Some say I was being too mean, the other half are saying it was a good reality check for him and that he also was way out of line for absolutely no reason. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. You gave him multiple opportunities to stop. He chose not to take them. To everyone saying that everyone sucks here, what exactly was OP supposed to do? He had already told him multiple times to drop it and relax. Dude pushed it, so OP pushed back. He did nothing wrong by standing up for himself. My in-laws started harassing me for destroying their family naming tradition. Plus update. Myself, 25 female, and my fiance, 27 male, have a 2-month-old son. We are overjoyed at being parents, but most of my in-laws are refusing to even see our baby because of a decision we made concerning his name. My in-laws have a tradition of giving the firstborn son of every generation the same name. Let's say it's Peter. This has been going on for about 7 generations already, and they're very serious about it. My fiance's eldest cousin was the latest person to be named Peter. Every one of his cousins has only had daughters so far, so our baby is the first son of his generation, and consequently should get the name. I have no problem with the name Peter, and would have been okay with naming my son that. Unfortunately, that was also the name of my uncle, who passed before I was born. I won't get into details, but it was horrible for my family. My father never got over losing his brother. My grandmother asked the family not to name any of our future kids Peter during her lifetime. My mother-in-law and father-in-law knew about this promise and at first seemed to not only be okay with us avoiding the name Peter, but also supportive of the one we chose. However, my grandmother sadly passed when I was 7 months pregnant. We traveled to her funeral. On our last days there, my in-laws called to offer me their condolences. Then my mother-in-law asked me if I was willing to think about the name Peter now. Suddenly, they were insistent that the name we chose was awful and we had to honor their tradition. According to them, they had only agreed to make an exception for us for my grandmother's sake and had no obligation to keep it now that she was gone. My family agrees that while it's true we don't have to avoid the name anymore, it still doesn't feel right to use it. My fiancé agrees with me as well, but his parents spent the last weeks of my pregnancy trying to convince us to change our minds about the name. When our baby was born and we named him what we wanted to, my in-laws were furious that we had broken a 7-generation-old family tradition. Some of them hadn't previously wanted to name their sons Peter, but did it anyway for the family's sake. They said our decision was selfish and that my family should have moved on by now. This truly has nothing to do with whether my family has moved on or not. It just felt like a betrayal to my grandmother and uncle's memories to even consider using the name. My father-in-law offered us $1,000 to change our son's name to Peter after he was born. That was 2 months ago, and neither of my fiancé's parents have met the baby or seen us since I was pregnant. Most of my in-laws are on their side, and this is causing a huge rift between my fiancé and his family. He assures me I'm fine, but I'm starting to feel really guilty about this. Am I the jerk? Also, middle names aren't used in my country. Most people get the maternal surname before the paternal one instead. Edit 2. It wasn't $1,000. We're in a different country, different currency. It's still a lot of money, but would probably translate to about $200 US. Update. About a week after my post, my fiancé's parents contacted us. They apologized for their behavior and begged to meet my son. They said they were ready to leave the naming debacle behind and truly wanted to be involved in their grandson's life. We were skeptical, but invited them over to meet the baby. The visit went well. They began coming over almost every day during the next 3 weeks. I noticed neither of them ever called my son by his name, but I didn't point it out. For the first time in months, things seemed good between my fiancé and his parents. One day, my fiancé was helping my father-in-law with something at our place, so my mother-in-law and I went to the park with my baby. Sometime later, I had to go to the bathroom, so I left him in the stroller with her. When I got back, she was sitting on a park bench, chatting with another woman who was cooing over my son. I went over there and introduced myself as my son's mom, and she said, "I thought his name was Peter." I didn't say a word, and neither did my mother-in-law. She followed me to the car, and we went back to my apartment. On the way there, I texted my fiancé about what had happened. The moment we got there, he kicked both of his parents out of our place. He had read my text and confronted his father. Thankfully, my father-in-law is a terrible liar and confessed immediately. Apparently, both my in-laws only call my son Peter. That includes whenever they're talking about him, every time they introduce him to someone else, and even baby talking to him on the few occasions they were with him. Neither of them are embarrassed by this, and they both think that they're in the right. We're heartbroken, especially my fiancé. Not only because his parents can't let go of their pride, but also because the name we chose for our son means a lot to both of us. I blame myself for encouraging my fiancé to allow them near him. I was raised in a different city than all of my grandparents and always wished they could have been more involved in my life. Losing my grandmother didn't help. Pretty much every doubt I had only existed because I thought it would be important for my son to grow up with all of his grandparents around. But now, all my guilt is gone. If they can't respect my son enough to call him by his name, they don't deserve to be in his life. I hope they enjoyed the 3 weeks they had with their grandson, because that's all they're getting until they get their heads out of their backside. Final update. My son is now 5 months old, almost 6. We're still no contact with my fiancé's parents, who haven't seen us since May. We've both blocked them everywhere. His relatives, who are on our side, still are, and most of the ones who weren't haven't come around. If anything, they're even more upset now. I remember someone suggesting that my fiancé's family might stop using the name after we decided not to. Well, you were right. Last week, one of my fiancé's cousins announced she was pregnant with a boy. She included her baby's name in the announcement, and it's not Peter. What followed was a string of aggressive Instagram DMs from both mother-in-law and father-in-law. They both created accounts for the sole purpose of contacting me. I didn't see them until 2 days later. They sent me almost an hour's worth of voice messages about how I had ruined their family. They wished their son had never met me, that he had seen me for who I truly am, and that I had never gotten pregnant. Many of the messages ended with, "I hope you're happy now," as if they thought they were getting the last word, only to think of something else that they wanted to say. There was name-calling, an accusation of me cheating, and a persistent refusal to refer to my son as their grandchild. My fiance and I listened to the messages together. He hadn't gotten any. As much as I tried to distance myself, I was in tears by the time it was all done. I still don't regret anything, especially after the stunt they pulled back in May, but I'm not completely free of the guilt yet. Not to mention their complete disregard for their grandson. I was already having an overwhelming week, and this just seemed like the final straw. I must have spent close to an hour sobbing in my fiance's arms. Once I was calmer, he unblocked his parents just to scream at them for a while. I only heard his side of the conversation, but it was more than enough. He finished the call by saying he didn't want to hear from them again. We had a long talk afterwards. My fiance opened up about the emotional blackmail by his family before and after my pregnancy. My in-laws were close to threatening him with anything they could if we didn't name our son Peter. I told him about my guilt and how awful I felt for putting him through this. We reassured each other, cried a bit more, and had a mostly pleasant evening with our baby. We contacted his cousin. The family's giving her crap for breaking the tradition again. They're being way less aggressive with her though, and I think many of my in-laws are finally learning to let it go. We're not expecting any apologies anytime soon, but we'll be glad if they do come through. Our wedding will be in September of 2024, and whoever doesn't give us a sincere apology until then is uninvited. My fiance's parents are banned either way. We came to that decision together. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard. Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.